Shailesh Athalye to walk us through the next level of details on how we are extending the power of the enterprise TruRisk platform for ecosystems risk factors to redefine the landscape of cyber risk management. Shailesh will focus on measures to be taken to track your TruRisk across your ecosystem of IT and security tools while communicating and eliminating it effectively. Over to you, Shailesh.
Hello. All right, we're going to have some magic shows, so we have a couple of chairs. All right, so first off, I hope all of you are having a fantastic conference and been seeing how today's Qualys platform been helping customers measure, communicate, and eliminate their TruRisk across vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, across the inventory risk, as well as what you saw for the first-party software, what you have. Now, what we are going to talk about is, obviously, like we would absolutely love for you to purchase, have everything from Qualys for managing whole of your cyber risk program. But many a times what happens is some of the other teams, maybe like the corporate team, right? Like they have another tool. Then you have cloud teams, they could be having another tool, same for containers, etc. So whole of the cyber risk ecosystem many a times get compiled of number of tools out there. What Sumedh talked about, 70 plus tools, many enterprises end up using. And as a part of this session, what we will do is we'll showcase how Qualys TruRisk platform is getting extended for supporting the risk measurement, communication, and elimination across your ecosystem products. Now, obviously, like what we talked about in the morning, right? Like we've been providing the innovative capabilities throughout the year, but this is, believe me, this is one of the biggest and one of the most strategic capability what we are building by working with number of CISOs and the product advisory board members who've been giving us advices on the same. So quickly, we all talked about like your ecosystem is made up of number of tools, and all of these tools are typically providing you the risk in a different manner, right? Like every tool sort of measures the risk in a different manner. If you have IoT devices, if you have application security tools, if you have cloud security tools, they are either providing in sort of high risk, low manner, if they're providing in CVSS manner, if they're providing in 1, 2, 3 manner, etc. And you need a mechanism to consolidate or unify or talk the same language when you convey risk to your stakeholders. The second part is, obviously, the context becomes really important when you're looking at measuring the risk, right? So we all saw in the morning, like what are all the risk factors you need to collect the data for? They essentially get into 5 parts, right? Like you need to have the data of the assets, vulnerabilities, risk, remediation. You need to look into the malicious threats and look into compliance, and for which you use number of cybersecurity risk management tools. And the problem is all of these either get the data, but they don't typically have the context in unified manner to understand like, okay, all of this data means what to me in terms of threats. Like all of these data points are typically leveraged as threats by all these actors out there. If some of these vulnerabilities or misconfigurations, which I'm finding across my tool system, are they getting exploited by the ransomware actors? If they're getting exploited by malicious actors already known in my industry. And then obviously you want to make sure that all of these unify together, and are there any toxic combinations what you get to see? Many times the toxic combinations are specifically related to cloud. We all think that in cloud, my security of cloud is only related to my workloads, resources, services in cloud. But the person who's managing the credentials, the IAM policy, his laptop is not in cloud. So that means you need to see the toxic combination that if that administrator's laptop has any exploitable vulnerability or not, which can essentially laterally move and can exploit all of these misconfigurations in cloud. So essentially what customers been asking us, like, hey, how do we get context of both threats for all of this data, what we are gathering, as well as see the unification if these represent any toxic combination when we combine this data. And for all of this, what we end up doing, what Sumedh talked about is Splunk, but then there are a lot of such examples. We end up creating our own data warehouses. We become basically a software shop. We hire developers. We try and make sure that we do coding, development to combine all of this data, and then try and see if we see any kind of risk, unification possible or not. But in all of this, what we have seen, what we have been hearing from customers, they become really costly affair, to manage. You're essentially going to now need your own support system to make sure like all of these updates are provided to these data warehousing tools. So challenge becomes like, even if I have all of this data, how do I make sure that I unify and communicate that with the context across the board? And when we talk about communicating data, we all saw this slide. Like your challenges as a security and risk management teams are almost 10 times as what you are using the Qualys ecosystem today, right? Like you already need to provide the tickets to your IT team. You need to make sure that if you find the application-related vulnerabilities, you need to provide that to your application team, and making sure that if you find misconfiguration, you need to provide that to your cloud team. So making sure that the right data is communicated with the right context to right user. But when you are using multiple tools in your ecosystem, this problem is obviously amplified by 10 times. Because now when you bring in another container security tool, then that means you are creating another connection to your ITSM, another integration with your asset system, or another integration with your compliance team to make sure all of this data is communicated correctly through certified channel for all of these stakeholders. Now, while all of these are the challenges of communicating, obviously there are challenges when you're looking at eliminating the risk as well. Because all of these risk factors exist in multiple environments, right? Like you have cloud environment for which you're using tools. You have obviously the infrastructure security tools. You have obviously the patch tools. You have EDR tools. Now the challenge becomes for customers, even if I unify all of this data in the ecosystem, which tool should I trigger what action? Yes, all my tools can trigger actions. But what I can use as an intelligent factor and decide which tool should do what. So based on the prioritization of TruRisk, how can I make sure that the right data point is provided to the right tool to eliminate my risk across my ecosystem? So that's another part what customers been asking. And then when our research team looked into data, right? Like these are top exploitable vulnerabilities. What do you see? Late 2022, early 2023, they're not 0 days, right? The attackers are still exploiting these vulnerabilities. When you look into now mean time to remediation for all of these, it's more than 30 days. But the exploitation time from attackers is less than 8 days. So now when the patching hygiene or the patching is not happening as fast as vulnerabilities getting exploited, the security teams ask, is there a way where we can still reduce our risk without needing to patch? And so that, we reduce our time to exposure. And we combine all of this, what we are hearing from customer, like number of our customers are operationalized the TruRisk, the way to quantify, calculate the risk. They're asking, like, how can we now extend that for bringing in the other ecosystem-related security data and provide the aggregated TruRisk view. The second interesting point, what they talk about is, look, I mean, we don't want to create another channel of communication, so how can we use Qualys's FedRAMP authorized system as the single source of truth? So even if we use startup tools, we don't want necessarily, because of our auditing issue, the data to remain there for a long period of time. So can we push that to Qualys so that it remains in the FedRAMP authorized systems? From there, we can actually provide reports You can push this data as tickets or provide it to your auditors. And based on all of this feedback, what we talked about in the morning, right? Like we are really excited. Sumit talked about it to extend the power of TruRisk for the ecosystem risk management. And it happens in 3 steps, right? Essentially, you would be able to aggregate all of these resources for you to measure the risk, for which, as essentially what you could do is you look into, again, Qualys-related findings, and all of these are our trusted partners we've been working with for bringing the data from those ecosystems to Qualys platform. And as the data comes back to the platform, the number one step, what happens is deduplicating assets and the security data. So we provide you your rule engine, which can define the rules, how you want to deduplicate the asset. If the asset is detected by my Microsoft Defender on corporate network, by maybe an agent, versus the same asset if it's discovered by Qualys scanner, you can decide maybe the agent-based detection has higher priority, so I can take that as single source of truth for the asset discovery. Based on which, now it goes ahead and correlates all these 25 plus threat feeds we talked about now get correlated with the data coming in from non-Qualys capabilities as well, for you to understand if the data coming in is linked to any of the malicious attacks happening out in the industry. Or if CVE data is coming in, if it's exploited by the threat actor related to your industry. And based on all of this, we also now correlate the data from CMDB, which is providing the intelligence of how critical is this business app. So if the defender is pushing the data to Qualys, and we correlate the data and sync that with ServiceNow and find that out, that this particular asset for which data is pushed by defender, if it's a part of checkout app, we normalize that criticality for that asset so that the TruRisk is calculated based on this new criticality provided by Qualys platform for you to provide your TruRisk, which is across your ecosystem. So Qualys, as well as non-Qualys data coming in, getting normalized, correlating with threat feeds, contextualizing for you to understand your TruRisk. So number one thing, this provides a full-fledged rule engine for you to bring in the data from third-party sources. But also once the data comes in, like we talked about in the morning, the data comes in and you would be able to now customize and normalize based on your inputs. If you see that the data coming in is a part of CISA exploitable catalog, if the threat feeds correlated by Qualys tells that this is exploited by the threat actor is true, and if it's a part of my production, increase the weightage by 20%, even if the data is coming in from outside. Compared to that, if we are getting the findings from maybe SCA tools like Sneak, and if the data comes in as list of vulnerabilities, and we see that this asset is a dev asset, you can actually reduce this weightage by 20%, 50%, etc., so that it gets normalized when you're calculating the risk. And accordingly, you would be able to see for even the data coming in from third-party sources, the QDS way of calculating remains absolutely same how you're managing it for your risk. Second part of that is the communication, right? Like we all talked about it, is communication not just in terms of providing the data to your right stakeholders, but the language in which the data is to be provided. And one of the most important part, what we've been hearing from our customers, is when I need to provide data of risk, I need to talk the language of what's the intrinsic value which is at risk. And now another mechanism what we are providing is ability for you to define what is the dollar value for various business apps I have in my environment, and accordingly, the TruRisk will tell you what's the intrinsic business value which is at risk. That means if you find out, like if there's a particular app has maybe a TruRisk of 900, but if its business value is maybe like $5 million, compared to maybe a business app 2, which has the TruRisk of 500, but the business value of that is maybe 30 million, TruRisk will prioritize that higher for you to look into prioritizing the issues on that app compared to the other app. So this is one mechanism where you would be able to not just normalize the security-related data, but also normalize the data based on the business value of that asset. And then essentially, we all mentioned this multiple times, that when the data comes back in the platform, when the TruRisk is calculated, downstream, again, the data gets correlated with which team this data is applicable for. If the data is coming in, again, from, say, the likes of Sneak, which is open source related vulnerabilities, and if the asset is having that particular application, the data will go to the application team or DevOps team, compared to if we see that the data is coming in for the asset, which is a part of your corporate network, same rule engine is applicable how you are pushing the data today, so that that ticket gets created and sent to your IT team who's managing that corporate machine, and not to the DevOps team. So again, the problem what we have solved with our TruRisk platform of assigning the right vulnerability to the right team with the right context, it's just getting extended for your ecosystem. So no longer now you need to solve this problem again for new tools you're bringing in your ecosystem. And same for cloud, so I'm not going to repeat this, but every time you bring in any new tool, you do not have to worry about creating the integrations downstream or upstream with your ServiceNow or Jira or Jenkins, etc. And based on which, another way, we talked about it, you can just essentially create the rules that if the source is maybe Defender, if the category vulnerability is part of checkout app, either create a ticket, create the Slack channel alert, or send it out as the Jira ticket as well. And then everybody's favorite topic, like Kunal said, everybody loves talking compliance, right? And one of the ways what security and risk team been struggling and would be able to now answer that question is, if my security data is equal to my compliance passing or my compliance failing. And that's what your auditor and your compliance people want to understand. So the TruRisk now will have list of all of these mandates what we talked about out of box with its mapping to the data coming in the platform, where you would be able to just simply select the mandate what you require, and all of this data which is correlated would be able to provide how you're doing against each of these mandates upfront, and provide that as reports to your auditor or your compliance team without needing to work in the Excel sheets. And then the elimination of risk, which is one of the biggest areas what we are investing in with our success in our patch management, the TruRisk Eliminate. This is the newest capability, the umbrella capability, what we are excited to launch about, which is higher level capability, allowing you to now comprehensively eliminate the risk by doing the remediation, mitigation, compensation, as well as doing the virtual patching for your security issues, making sure that your vulnerability never remains exposed to your attacker one way or the another, even if you're not able to patch it. What does it include? Number one part, today's patch management, right, which already allows our customers, 2,000 plus customers already using it, deployed 55 million patches, what Sumedh talked about, right? One of the biggest patch management tool out there, specifically allowing our customers to reduce their risk doing the risk-based patching. So this allows you to make sure that the patching happens risk-based as well as config changes. But additionally, the TruRisk Mitigate extends that power for you to now mitigate the risk. If there are exploitable vulnerabilities like memory exploitation, Iran is going to give an amazing demo, which I'm excited about, where he would be showcasing this capability, how we are creating almost a virtual memory guard so that the vulnerability does not get exploited till the time you actually patch your system. And then if nothing is possible, obviously another way is if you're using maybe Palo Alto Firewall or any other third-party system, you would be able to now orchestrate an action using our Q flow, such as making the firewall changes, such as quarantining the asset, etc., so that you compensate that risk. And what are all the actions? So I'm not going to go over all of these, but like we talked about it in the morning, all of these 14 actions are provided now for your security teams to take the matter of eliminating the risk in your own hand without needing to depend on the patch team. So let the patching happen whenever a patching needs to happen, and you would still be able to reduce this risk using these multiple techniques. So with that, I'm going to quickly do a demo, and we'll showcase how some of these data points come to Qualys ecosystem and become the part of the TruRisk platform. Could we move to the demo, please? All right, the first part for doing the measurement of risk is making sure that we are aggregating data from various ecosystem tools, which are non-Qualys. So in this case, I'm taking an example, and in just two steps, I'm going to show if your corporate team on IT side is if using the Microsoft Defender, how you would be able to just configure our connector and push this data to Qualys platform. So number one step, right? Like you would be able to come in. This is a new age look of the TruRisk platform, which would be getting released soon. So we are providing multiple ways where you would be able to use APIs or connector-based approach, and you would be able to provide for Defender, I want to create the connector and push the data to Qualys. Now, interestingly, when you look at pushing the data, what's the biggest capability which has been helping customer group their asset is asset tagging. So you can define that the same asset tagging rules are now applicable for the third-party data coming in. Meaning if the Defender provided asset is running a database, the same tag rule, if you're having the database running, is equal to critical asset, would work on this particular asset coming in from Defender. So all these rule engines will work on this for the Defender data to come in and get or become a part of your existing tags. Now, once the connector is created, the second part of that, what you need to do is choose all the other ones, what you want to get, and get their data in TruRisk platform. So I've chosen like a bunch of other ecosystem products. The second part, what I'm going to do is define now what's my business tags, which is higher level tag than all the technology tags what you've been creating right now for grouping your assets. So in this case, again, the checkout app created, which is based on my ServiceNow CIs, for which we already saw in the morning that my checkout app has the TruRisk. I'm using the same app name in here, which gets now applicable for the Defender data. And once it's done, you get to see the TruRisk, which is combined across the ecosystem, along with the risk factors. So if you see the risk factors, which are providing that my checkout app's risk is highest, in this case, I can go ahead and check for a particular app, what is my TruRisk, and what are the contributing factors, and what's the percentage of them. You get to see that the contributing factor of vulnerability has the highest percentage in my environment. Obviously, I want to know what's going on there. And that's the TruRisk, which is highest there, cause of the data coming in from VMDR, as well as the data coming in from Defender. In this case, we push the data from Defender. Now, let's quickly go and check the data which is coming in from Microsoft Defender, already mapped to our asset tag at checkout app. And guess what? What are you seeing? That the data is already correlated for that to be a QID in Qualys platform, and you're seeing the QDS already generated for the same. Now, if you see this example, this is probably the LSA vulnerability, called 5.3, etc. All the threat feeds are already cross-mapped. It's already talked about it in Dark Web Forum. It's a part of CISA exploitable, is already exploited by Lockbit. So Qualys increase the detection severity of the same. Now, what's the next thing what you want to do is you want to communicate this to the right team. So the same alerting ServiceNow ticket creation mechanism works for you for pushing the data from now Defender. So you do not have to create now another channel of pushing the data to your ticketing or ServiceNow teams. Second part of that is compliance. I can now simply come in and select, I want to create a mandate-based compliance for my NIST 853 revision 5. And how many of you are using CIS benchmarks, right? Like across the board for cloud, for infrastructure, for databases, etc. How much of hassle there is if you want to get just a CIS report for all of your assets which are spread across these attack surfaces. AWS benchmark for cloud, your database benchmark for infrastructure, Oracle maybe another MongoDB, another operating system which is in cloud. So how many times you need to create various different CIS benchmark-based reports? Now, in this way, you would be able to just select, like, OK, I want the NIST-based report. And I will select maybe more mandates. So it actually supports more than one mandate. And now I will select my policies. So I can now select all of my CIS policies. It does not matter where your infrastructure is, as long as you're providing the right tags, and you'll be able to see all of this data combined for you to create the report. And the report is in front of you. One click, all this data getting combined for you to see what your compliance risk is going to look like across your ecosystem. Another part which really wanted to showcase is we now have another integration with a DSPM kind of capabilities. So we have a couple of our partners with whom we are working to make sure that we are able to identify the sensitive data storages and bring in that context for showcasing the TruRisk. So we are working with Normalize as well as White Hats, where they would be able to now provide for our common customers data which is already cross-mapped to various assets on which there's Qualys also running, or you can bring in those assets, same like before, you would be able to map the asset tags. In this case, I've said, like, OK, the same data from Normalize is coming in to provide me now the context, the asset tag, or the assets for which I had TruRisk, I had exploitable vulnerability, or the risk, on which now I found out that I also have sensitive data. That context is now coming in from Normalize, which is the DSPM tool, and that increased my TruRisk. So I had risk, but because that particular asset or the data store was having the sensitive data, the TruRisk increased. Now, the second part of communication, what we've been talking about, is communicating the data in terms of dollar values. So in just phase one, what we are providing is ability for you to just quickly come in and define your dollar value for each of your business app. Now, if you're using the tools like Archer or any other ones which you have defined the dollar value, you would be able to push the dollar value data per asset tag for Qualys TruRisk. So I've just defined, like, for all of these business tags, this is my business value. And once the data comes in, it gets married now for you to see what's my TruRisk looking like and what's the value which is at risk based on what Qualys understood the TruRisk is for all of these assets which make the part of their checkout app. In this case, again, I'm taking an example, right? The DSPM data has come in. The data store of this particular checkout app has sensitive data, obviously, and cause of which my business value at risk has gone up. I can quickly see which are these resources which are carrying this sensitive data, can quickly see where these instances are, etc. I can go ahead and now create a ticket, or I can make an action, remediate this risk in cloud. All right, and then I'm going to leave the part of risk mitigation for the next session, where Iran is going to do amazing demo. So I don't want to go over this high-level demo. He's actually going to showcase how you can create a virtual guard to stop the risk of that vulnerability getting exploited. And with that, if we could move back to the slide, and I would like to call on stage Rafael Ferreira, who's from Banco Pan, has been managing the cyber risk. And he talked about how he's been managing cyber risk and remediation at Banco Pan during the VMDR session. And would love to hear from him, like, why he's excited about this capability. So, Rafael, if you could just come in and.
Hello.
Awesome. So, Rafael, just a couple of questions what we have quickly, right?
Okay.
And so one thing is like I mean, all of them actually saw how you're getting the value out of TruRisk for your current VMDR and risk management, risk prioritization, and patch management program. You've been working with us. You've been giving feedback on this TruRisk platform, etc. So do you want to share like which tools you currently use? Do you think like how this capability could be beneficial for us?
Okay. I'm here with my Galaxy. So I wrote down some questions for you, and I will answer your question and give you some questions because your presentation is very interesting. So about the tools, so we have like Prisma Cloud, Burp Suite. Our red team use Metasploit and Map. So is it possible to integrate all of these tools in TruRisk?
So today we are working already with Burp Suite is already integrated with TruRisk. So you should be able to send the pen test data, and that would absolutely be correlated with threat feeds as well as the business criticality for you to know the TruRisk. Prisma, we would be working on, like you know about, and some of the other tools what we are working on in the DevOps pipeline. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Another question, since I'm Brazilian and our budget is in reais, not dollars. So believe me, guys, that hurts. It's 5 to 1, so 5 reais to $1. So how will be the pricing of TruRisk? Because it will be based on assets in integrated tools.
Yeah, great question. So I'm going to give one political answer probably. We are still defining that, like how the pricing going to pan out. But look, like what I want to mention is today's Qualys platform is enterprise TruRisk platform. So if you're using Qualys capabilities, whether it is policy compliance, web application security, cybersecurity asset management, all of this data would get correlated for you to create this compliance report, for you to generate the risk prioritization report or risk recommendation plans, etc., included as a part of the ETM. What we are looking at charging for customers are for the assets which are not managed by Qualys, and the number would be per asset, but it is still to be defined.
Okay. Can Qualys have like a discount to Brazilians? So
Once you probably we can. I mean, once you win the World Cup, maybe I don't know.
okay. So since we use like ServiceNow, what kind of actions TruRisk can do in ServiceNow with this integration with ITSM, not just ServiceNow, but Jira or other tools or other similar tools?
Yeah, so I think many of you probably know that Qualys already has an app running in Jira as well as ServiceNow, which already creates the out-of-box rules to push the data to write users in their ServiceNow channel, and that's already going to be extended for all of these ecosystem-related data coming in Qualys platform. Okay. Absolutely. So we should be able to support that for non-Qualys data and the tools as well.
Okay,
yes.
Perfect.
Yep, and cause this is Fireside chat, I also get to ask questions probably. So I just have one question. I know like we did talk about many of these throughout the day. Ability for you to measure, communicate, or eliminate risk, etc. Which of this would be your most favorite capability? What you would?
Okay. I think the possibility of measure the financial costs of cyber risk, because it's a challenge for us in Brazil. I think not just in Brazil, but it's difficult for us to measure how much costs a data breach or a vulnerability or a risk. So I think the financial cost that you guys showed, that it's possible to put like a value, a financial value in an application. I think it's the greatest benefit to us to defend the investment with the board in C-levels.
Awesome. Cool. I mean, those are all the questions what I had, Rafael. Thank you so much for piggybacking, coming with me, and answering my question or asking me some of the questions. With that, we'd love to call Iran on stage, who would come in and showcase how the risk elimination works for you to not just remediate the risk, but also go ahead and compensate or mitigate the risk beyond patching. With that, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Shailesh.
Thank you for coming in.